You know, I heard the best way to start a video is to find something to hook a viewer with. But I'm not entirely sure how this is gonna help. Greetings, Internet! My name is Ace and welcome to Boss Reviews, where I take one video game, look at all the bosses within it, and review them. Today, we're going to continue our look at the boss fights of the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy by looking at what many consider to be the best game of the series, Donkey Kong Country 2: Diddy's Kong Quest. The original Donkey Kong Country was such a success upon its release that it wasn't just praised by critics and gamers alike, but sold over 6 million copies in its first holiday season. So it made sense that there would be a sequel. But how would they improve upon such a critically acclaimed game? By improving everything, from the graphics, the level design, music, and more. But are its boss fights any good? Before we find out, let's take a look at how the game plays. Donkey Kong Country 2, like the first one, is a 2D platformer, where you play as Diddy Kong, returning from the first game, and his new girlfriend, Dixie Kong, as they journey to Crocodile Isle to find Donkey Kong, who has been kidnapped by Captain K. Rool. The gameplay is very similar to the original, but with a few new things added in. You can move either left or right, as well as run. If you touch an enemy, or its projectile, you'll lose one of your Kongs. If you only have one Kong when getting hit, you'll lose a life. However, if you fall into a hazardous pit, you'll lose a life, regardless of how many Kongs you have. If you happen to lose one of the Kongs, you can find them inside a DK barrel. Your main method of dealing with baddies is jumping on them. However, not all enemies can be jumped on. Some require you to cartwheel or twirl into them, and if that doesn't work, you can throw barrels, boxes, or cannonballs at them. The Kongs are also capable of climbing ropes. They can climb them vertically or horizontally, and with two ropes next to each other, they can move between them. There are also floating hooks that the Kongs can hang from, if need be. Something that was in the original game that I didn't talk about is the animal buddies. These are animals that you can ride on if you happen to find the corresponding box that they're hidden in. There are 5 in total that can do many different things, from dealing with baddies the Kongs can't touch, to launching projectiles, jumping high into the sky, creating platforms, and flying. These creatures are really helpful. However, if they happen to get hit by a baddie, they'll kick you off and run away. But that's impossible with an animal barrel. These are new to the series, and they turn the Kongs into the animal that's on the barrel. These are for levels where the animal buddy is required to progress. You could take the same amount of hits as the number of Kongs you have, and refill it by fighting DK barrels. Now for some things that are completely new to the series. First is the piggyback ride. With a simple press of a button, you're able to make the Kongs perform a piggyback. You can't run like this, but you are able to throw whoever is on the back. If you throw them vertically, you can reach high up collectibles in areas, while throwing them forward will treat the Kong as a projectile. The other new ability in the game is Dixie Kong's helicopter twirl. After jumping, you can continuously twirl Dixie's hair, slowing her descent. This is great for trying to jump onto enemies, as well as jumping across hazardous pits. I think that about covers the gameplay. Let's get to our first boss fight. In the wreckage of Gangplank Galleon perches our first boss of the game. He's the big bad leader of the Mini Neckies, Crow. Crow is a giant Mini Neckie, decked out in pirate gear. He starts out the fight by flying up to his nest and grabbing an egg. Then he'll fly to the edge of the screen and drop it. The egg will bounce towards the Kongs, bouncing lower and lower until it reaches the other side. Crow will then attempt to swoop down towards you. This is when you can pick up the egg and throw it at Crow. Do this one more time, and the boss will change his tactics. Instead of dropping eggs onto you, Crow will ram into the side of the nest, causing his eggs to jump out of it. The eggs fall one at a time, and eventually one of them will land on the platform. You can pick this egg up and throw it at Crow to damage him. Do this one more time, and the boss will get sent to an early grave. So how is our first boss of the game? Well, I think it's a pretty decent first boss. It's not too hard of a fight. The attacks are easy to dodge during both of the phases. You get to learn how to dodge them during the first, and when things get shook up a bit in the second, you're quite prepared. Though you only have to damage Crow 4 times, which I feel is kinda low. This isn't a bad thing. I mean, a boss fight is supposed to be challenging, but this being the first one shouldn't be an egg in the face. There is a lot to the design of the boss that I do like. It fits in with the pirate theme of the game, wearing a pirate hat and belt, and I do find it funny that a boss named Crow would fight in the crow's nest of a ship. The music, though, is amazing. Boss Bossa Nova really works as a boss fight theme. It's menacing and sounds just like a pirate boss theme. I also appreciate that when the fight begins, the Kongs freak out at the sight of the boss. It really shows that this is a step up in a threat compared to previous enemies. I like that his main method of attacking, his eggs, slowly bounce from one side to the other. This shows that you can go under them to dodge the attack. It might not be apparent, but you actually can jump on them, at least in the first phase of the fight. This will allow you to pick them up and attack Crow faster. Of course, you can also just hold the egg and run into Crow if you're not that good at throwing. I like that there is a second phase, making the fight a bit more interesting and difficult, as you can't exactly know how fast the eggs are going to fall from the nest. Finally, there's actually a little bit of a hidden bonus in this room. If you use a piggyback and throw a Kong onto the nest above, you can actually nab 2 banana coins. It's nice that there is a little reward for exploring the room. Now, while I think the boss is an overall decent fight, I don't think there's anything really outstanding about it, so I'm just gonna say Crow is a good boss fight. At the base of Crocodile Isle lies a fiery abyss that's guarded by a boss made of bone and metal. He's a giant cleaver named Cleaver. Cleaver starts out the fight by rising from the magma, held on by a fiery hand. He launches orbs of magma towards you, and after 3, a cannonball will fall from the sky. You can pick it up and throw it at him to damage him, though do try to not hit the magma orbs he continues to launch. Hooks will appear over the lava pit in the middle of the arena that you must use to jump over to the other side. There, another cannonball will appear that you can throw at Cleaver. Repeat this one more time and you'll send Cleaver down to be melted to his core. Or not! Cleaver will fake his defeat and launch himself from the magma. He'll attempt to stab the Kongs, then another bunch of hooks will appear above the pit. Jump to the other side to find a cannonball and throw it at Cleaver to damage him. He'll glow red with rage and begin chopping towards you. Use the hooks to jump to the other side to find another cannonball to throw at him. Repeat this one more time to cause Cleaver to explode into little bits and pieces. Is this boss an improvement over the last one? In my opinion, very much so. Cleaver is a much bigger threat than the last boss. He's constantly attacking you in both of his phases, either with his fire orbs, stabs, or chops. You also have to time your throws against the boss so that you don't waste the cannonball. If this does happen, you just have to wait a little bit and another cannonball will appear. The arena fits the area of the game, but honestly it is nothing special, though I do like the hazardous pit that you must navigate over, testing your ability to jump from hook to hook while dodging attacks. The music is once again Boss Bossa Nova, which is, once again, a great song. There's also some hidden banana coins in the top right of the arena that you can use Dixie Kong's helicopter twirl to reach. I really like the fact that the boss glows red with anger. It looks great on the metallic sword part. It also really adds to the franticness of the second phase as well, when Cleaver starts chasing you over the lava pit. So I'm actually gonna have to say that Cleaver is a great boss fight. It's fun, frantic, and challenging in many different ways. Past Crocodile Cauldron lies a swamp, home to our next boss. He's big, and so is his weapon. Meet the boss of Creme Quay, Cudgel. Huh, it's 2 bosses named after weapons. Anyways, Cudgel begins the fight by jumping into the air and attempting to land onto the Kongs. Once he hits the ground, he will cause an earthquake, stunning you if you're standing on the platform. He'll do this a total of 3 times, swipe with his cudgel, and then leap away. This will cause a TNT barrel to fall down onto the platform. You have to quickly pick it up before Cudgel comes back down and destroys it. Then you can throw it at him to damage him. Each time you hit Cudgel, he will increase the speed of his jumps. After taking TNT barrels to the face 3 times, Cudgel will change his tactics. He'll hop towards the Kongs, causing an earthquake each time he lands. After the 3rd hop, he'll leap off the screen and a TNT barrel will appear. Damage him just like in the first phase. Every time Cudgel gets hit, he'll increase the speed of his hops. After getting hit 3 more times, Cudgel will get launched to his demise. Does Cudgel keep the streak of improving upon the last boss? Well, let's start with the difficulty. Personally, I don't find this as hard as the last boss. Having to dodge the boss as he tries to land on you isn't as hard as dodging fire orbs and an angry sword. The earthquakes caused by Cudgel landing is a neat idea, and they do give you a chance to learn about it since you'll have plenty of time to dodge his attack if you've been stunned at the beginning. But other than that, I'm just not as challenged by this boss fight. He doesn't really use his Cudgel that often, which I think a boss named Cudgel would use his Cudgel more than just after finishing his 3 jumps. He does use it if you try to run the TNT barrel into him, requiring you to throw it instead, but that isn't very hard at all. He just stands there waiting for you to throw it. So yeah, I don't think Cudgel's an improvement on the difficulty side of these boss fights. For design, I'm also just not really feeling it. Mainly because he's just a recolor of a non-playable character in the game. This NPC is Clubba, who helps you access secret levels if you get him what he wants. Cudgel just feels uninspired. The only interesting thing he does is his earthquakes caused by his jumps. He feels like a really stupid boss in that he summons a TNT barrel just to stand there and wait for you to throw it at him, and he hardly uses his giant Cudgel to attack you. It's not a bad boss, but there really isn't that much good about it. Cudgel is unfortunately an okay boss fight. The happiest place on Crocodile Isle is the location for our next boss fight. Kremland is full of roller coasters and giant hives, so it's no wonder that the 4th boss of the game is a giant zinger. He's no queen bee, meet King Zing. King Zing starts the fight by flying around the arena, kinda like the Zinger boss in the last game. However, he has a different pattern. The king starts in the top right of the arena, flies to the top left side, moves down a little bit, flies to the right side, and down a bit more. He repeats this pattern until he reaches the floor, will then fly to the top of the arena using the same pattern. To damage him, you first have to go into this Animal Buddy barrel. This will transform you into Squawks. As Squawks, you can fly around the arena and shoot projectile eggs. You have to use these eggs to hit King Zing's only weak spot, his stinger. It's very small and hard to hit, as he's always moving, but once you do, the boss will flash red for a bit, giving him some time to continue his pattern. After hitting him twice, King Zing will turn completely red and slowly start advancing towards you. While doing this, he will shoot tiny projectile spikes in 8 directions, a total of 3 times. Afterwards, he'll return to the top right of the arena and begin his pattern again. Every time you damage the boss, he will move faster both during his normal phase and his invincible phase, as well as shoot his projectile spikes faster. After damaging King Zing 6 times, he'll reveal his true form. He'll shrink down to the size of a regular Zinger, turn completely red, and summon 4 more Zingers. King Zing will advance towards you, as the 4 Zingers fly around him. To damage the king, you must first destroy the 4 Zingers, but if you don't do it fast enough, more will appear. After they're gone, the king will turn yellow, and you can simply hit him with an egg. He'll flash red for a bit, then continue flying towards you. Every time you damage him, he'll fly faster and faster. After hitting him 3 times, you'll dethrone King Zing and send him crashing down. So how does this spiky boss compare to the last 3 boss fights? Well, I'd say the difficulty is on point. Being Squawks is quite different than what you've done with the previous boss fights, so it's really nice that the boss flies around slowly at first. It gives you time to get used to using Squawks. Not that you wouldn't have had to use them prior to this boss fight, it just gets you ready for the challenge ahead. The weak point is obvious, as they made it constantly glow, though they don't make it easy to hit. The boss may be big, but there is plenty of room to fly around him. The projectile he launches can be a big surprise for the first time fighting him, but after you see it once, it isn't too hard to dodge. The second phase, however, I don't feel is much more difficult. Having a giant boss turn into a bunch of little bosses can be challenging, but it isn't so much here. If you're not good at flying and shooting at the same time, it can be hard to take care of the 4 Zingers, but after you kill them all, they don't come back. This makes the final phase a trite too easy in my opinion. Design-wise, well, it's just a giant zinger, and it doesn't look too different from Queen Bee in the first game. But the fight is way different and more interesting. First, you actually get a hint of the fight in the previous level, Rambi Rumble. Towards the end, you, playing as Rambi, are forced to run away from King Zing as he chases you through the level. Having a boss that's so tough that Rambi the Rhino can't hurt it? That's pretty threatening. The arena is a giant zinger hive, which has always been one of my favorite areas in the game, but it really isn't that special. Flying around as squawks while shooting out eggs to hit the boss's weak point is fun. This is the first ever boss fight requiring you to be an animal buddy, and I think it works perfectly. And King Zing proves to be challenging as he's big, fast, and capable of shooting off projectile spikes. The second phase though, I'm just not that big on it. King Zing actually being a regular zinger is a neat idea, but he doesn't really do much. His only attack is summoning other zingers, and all they do is fly around him. If maybe they had it so that he made them fly towards us, or maybe around the room, it'd be cool, but there really isn't anything interesting about this second phase. But I don't think that's enough to ruin what I think is a good boss fight. King Zing may look like Queen Bee, but he's a much different boss fight. Things can't always be happy on Crocodile Isle. Sometimes you just have to face the dark and gloomy side of things. That's where our next boss comes in. Straight from the Great Beyond, we get a rematch with the first boss Crow as Creepy Crow. Creepy Crow decides to play it safe in his ethereal form. Instead of dropping eggs at you, he'll send a swarm of creepy mini-neckies. 3 of them will try to dive bomb you, when a normal mini-neckie will show up to do the same. Jumping on this normal one will have a barrel appear. At this point, you can throw the barrel at Creepy Crow, who will try to dive bomb you as well. After getting damaged, the boss will fly up out of the arena. Hooks and ropes will appear, and you'll have to climb up to the next area of the arena. As you do this, eggs will fall from above that you must dodge. Once you reach Creepy Crow, the fight will resume, just like in the first phase. However, there will be 5 creepy mini-neckies, 1 normal mini-neckie, and they will dive bomb faster than before. Creepy Crow will move faster as well when you get the barrel to throw at him. After he takes another hit, he'll fly up again. Chase after him on the hooks and ropes while eggs fly from above, to the right, and left at a much faster speed. At the top, 7 creepy mini-neckies and 1 normal mini-neckie will bombard you at even faster speeds. Jump on the real mini-neckie to get a barrel and throw it at Creepy Crow, and send him back to wherever ghosts that die go. So how does this apparition of a boss do? Well, let's actually look at the design first. It's an interesting idea to have a boss return as a ghost, and it feels like the boss has learned from his previous fight with us. Well, kinda. Yes, the regular mini-neckie does spawn a barrel that we use against the boss, but he doesn't immediately give us an opportunity to attack. Plus, when we're transitioning to the next part of the arena, he bombards us with his eggs. This is the part that we're most vulnerable. We can't jump on the eggs nor grab them to throw. They come out pretty fast and are harder to dodge when climbing ropes. Not that the game doesn't prepare us for them. When we start climbing, there's an egg that falls down out of our reach, signaling to us that we need to get ready for some high-speed rope climbing egg dodging. The arena is just like the first bosses, only made spookier by making it rain. Honestly, I think the only thing it needs is some lightning to really make it an interesting arena. So I do think it is an interesting boss fight. But how is the difficulty? Well, it's sad to say that this boss only takes 3 hits to go down. That's less than the first boss, which this is the ghostly version of. But I could definitely see how much longer the fight would have been if you, say, had to hit the boss 6 times, twice per area. The area transition is nicely done. They give you a chance to realize that you'll be dodging eggs when you start doing it, and if you happen to get hit, there is a DK barrel you can break to get your Kong back. In the first area at least. Once you damage the boss the second time and have to ascend to the final area, it's game on. You have a much narrower set of ropes to use to dodge the eggs, and they start coming down and sideways at ridiculous speeds. There is some nice escalation during the fight too. It starts out nice and slow, showing you what you have to do, and starts increasing the speed and the number of obstacles you have to deal with in order to damage the boss. They even add hazardous pits as the fights go on, and make the platforms smaller. But is it harder than the last boss fight? I'm gonna have to say no. It does have better escalation than King Zing, but I don't find jumping on these enemies that challenging. kinda sad that this boss isn't really that much of a challenge, but I give it points for what it does as a boss fight. So I'm gonna say Creepy Crow is barely a good boss fight. We finally reach our final area of the game, the home of Captain K. Rool. K. Rool's Keep. And at the top of the castle stands our next boss fight, Donkey Kong? Hey! Hey, wait! What? No! We've been bamboozled! There's no boss fight here! Captain K. Rool has taken Donkey Kong aboard his flying croc. Of course, he hides behind a bramble level, but who cares? It's now time for the final boss fight. Captain K. Rool starts the fight out by attacking Donkey Kong for enjoyment. He'll then shoot out a cannonball from his blunderbuss. After a couple of seconds, he'll then use his weapon to propel himself to the other side of the arena. Then he'll try to draw the Kongs closer by sucking them in with his blunderbuss. During this time, you must grab the cannonball and throw it into the blunderbuss. This will cause the weapon to explode, shooting the cannonball out and damaging Captain K. Rool. Every time you damage the boss, he'll shoot out more spiked cannonballs that rest on the ground, increase the speed he dashes to the other side of the arena, as well as the number of times he dashes. After damaging the boss 3 times, he'll collapse to the ground. Donkey Kong will then attempt to escape, but is forced to stop when K. Rool rises again. This second phase has the boss changing how he shoots his projectiles. First, he'll shoot them out at different heights. You have to jump or duck under them as they come out faster and faster. Eventually, the boss will shoot out a barrel. Jumping on this releases a cannonball that you can then throw into K. Rool's blunderbuss. After moving to the other side of the arena, the boss will shoot out cannonballs that bounce on the ground. There's 3 types, each bouncing at different heights. Afterwards, you can jump on the barrel to get a cannonball to damage the boss. In this last part, K. Rool will make his cannonballs perform a looping pattern. Some you'll have to jump over, and some you'll have to run under. Once again, jump on the barrel to get a cannonball to damage the boss again. He'll then collapse and Donkey Kong will attempt to escape, but Captain K. Rool rises once again. This last phase, the boss uses special globs that can affect the Kongs in various ways. First, he'll shoot 3 blue globs that will freeze the Kongs if touched. Then, he'll slide across the arena 3 times, getting more transparent until he's invisible. A cannonball will then appear that you can throw into the boss's weapon. Next, Captain K. Rool will shoot out red bouncing globs. These will slow the Kongs down as the boss shoots out spiked cannonballs. Afterwards, another cannonball appears that you can use to damage the boss. Finally, the boss shoots out looping purple globs that will reverse the left and right controls. Captain K. Rool will then vanish to different areas of the arena and attempt to suck the Kongs close with his blunderbuss. After trying this 4 times, a cannonball will appear that you can use to finally put down the captain. But it's not over yet. Captain K. Rool rises again, but thankfully Donkey Kong breaks free and punches the boss out of the arena, down the mountain, and into the ocean below. Whew! That was a heck of a boss fight to talk through. Let's see. Does Captain K. Rool stand up as a final boss? As I said in my boss review of the original Donkey Kong Country, heck yes! Captain K. Rool rises above all of the boss fights in the game, as he should. The final boss should be the hardest boss fight, as well as the most interesting. This is what the game has been building up to, a rematch against the final boss in the last game, and boy does the captain deliver. The fight is excellent in showing you what to do. The first thing the boss does is shoot out a cannonball that you can pick up. After attempting to dash into you, he'll then open himself up by trying to draw you closer by activating suck mode on his blunderbuss. It's extremely apparent that you have to send this cannonball back to where it came from. Why? Because you've been handling these things since the beginning of the game. Plus, you're never really safe in this fight, because just damaging the boss puts you in harm. After the blunderbuss explodes, the cannonball will shoot out, and each time it does, it goes faster and faster. So it's nice that after the first and second phases, you get a DK barrel to use. The escalation is amazing as well. Things start out nice and slow, letting you get used to the mechanics, and before you know it, you'll have to maneuver yourself around, above, and under all sorts of projectiles that are always increasing in speed. And the end to the fight, so good. We're essentially stalling for time until Donkey Kong can break free and punch K. Rool out of the ship and down the island into the swamp below. A perfect ending to an amazing fight. It doesn't just end there though. The music, oh, it's so menacing. fitting well for a final boss fight, and the sound effects are great too. The stage is pretty cool too. It's way different from the rest of the game and stands out nicely. So how does this final boss stack against the rest? By being the greatest boss fight of the game.
Whew, we finally made it through all the boss fights of the secret boss alarm!
A secret boss is exactly what it sounds like. A boss fight hidden within the game. They tend to be an even bigger challenge than the final boss, and are usually unlocked through challenging means. This is true for Donkey Kong Country 2. Each level in the game has hidden bonus rooms. After completing one of the many objectives in the bonus room, you're rewarded with a Krem coin. These special rewards can be exchanged with Klubba to access his golden barrels that lead to the hidden area, the Lost World. This area hosts the hardest levels in the game. Seriously, these levels don't hold anything back. However, after completing all 5 levels, you'll get access to the secret boss. It's Captain K. Rool! Apparently falling down into the ocean and being chomped on by sharks isn't enough to take care of this croc. Captain K. Rool decides he's had enough fooling around with the Kongs. He means business, and he's going to do whatever he can to take them out. There is one simple pattern to recognize with this secret boss fight. The boss will shoot out a purple reversing glob in the pattern that he will then shoot out his spiked Ganon balls. So for the first phase, he will shoot out one glob following a series of Ganon balls at various heights. You must jump and duck to avoid the projectiles. In the second phase, the boss will shoot one low glob and one high glob. Then, he'll shoot out his spiked cannonballs, alternating between the 2 heights, and increase the speed he shoots them out. His third phase begins with him shooting out 3 globs, one after the other. This is followed by spiked cannonballs being shot at the same height, increasing in speed. Next, Captain K. Rool will shoot out one slow glob followed by a fast glob. The cannonballs in this phase will mimic this, but the number of fast cannonballs will increase after every slow cannonball is shot. The final phase will start with K. Rool shooting 3 globs in rapid succession, each increasing in height. The cannonballs will do this as well, starting with him ascending, then descending. After this, he'll shoot 3 cannonballs ascending, pause, then shoot another cannonball. The boss repeats this while descending the projectiles before shooting out a barrel. Jump on this barrel to release the cannonball within, that you must then pick up and throw into the boss's blunderbuss to end this fight. Captain K. Rool will explode, launching himself up into the air and down into the core that powers the island. So, is this secret boss better than the final boss? Well, it's actually hard to say, really. They're extremely similar boss fights. This secret boss is shorter than the final boss, but I do find it harder. So I'd say the overall difficulty is pretty much the same. However, I do like the design of the fight itself. It just keeps building and building, just like the final boss, but at a much more accelerated rate. I like the arena it's in. It has a real ancient temple sort of vibe, and the energy blasting out from the core looks really cool. The music is the same as the final boss, and I'd be annoyed by that, but it is a good song, and since it's such a similar fight, I'm okay with it. So all in all, I find this secret boss to be just like the final boss. Great! So, with a total of 7 boss fights, Donkey Kong Country 2 has, in my opinion, 1 okay boss fight, 3 good boss fights, and 3 great boss fights. That is a pretty good improvement from the original Donkey Kong Country. Now those were some fun boss fights. Do you agree with me, or do you have an opinion of your own? Let me know, and I'll see you guys next time on Boss Reviews.